community of cave dwellers in Siberia who lived 54,000 years ago. They all died in the cave, and fragments of their DNA is helping researchers understand a bit about how they lived.
What if our human story has a massive chapter that's been completely ripped out? Scientists recently found the evidence. Inside the DNA of a Neanderthal from a Siberian cave, they discovered a genetic sequence that is unmistakably modern human.
But using the science of DNA, we begin to realize, hey, there was a lot of mating that went back and forth between Neanderthals and humans.
The problem? The timeline is all wrong. This DNA is tens of thousands of years older than our accepted migration out of Africa. It's a biological anachronism, a clue pointing to a mysterious, forgotten exodus of our own species. A group that walked the earth, met our ancient cousins, and then disappeared, leaving behind only this impossible genetic ghost. The phantom lineage. You see, for years, the accepted story was pretty straightforward. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, evolved in Africa. Around 60,000 years ago, a large group of them migrated out, spreading across the globe. On their journey, they ran into Neanderthals in Europe and the Middle East. Sometimes they fought, but other times they had children together. The result? Most humans today who don't have purely African ancestry carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. It's a cool fact, a little reminder of our ancient cousins. But the story was always one way. We got DNA from them. The scientists working on the Altai Neanderthal expected to find more of the same. But as they sequenced her genome, something utterly bizarre popped up on their screens. Buried in her ancient genetic code was a sequence that wasn't Neanderthal at all. It was modern human DNA. To put it mildly, this was a shock. This wasn't a case of contamination from the lab. The DNA was old, fragmented, and clearly integrated into her genome. It was a genuine piece of her ancestry. The most shocking fact is the timeline. This Neanderthal woman lived around 100,000 years ago. That's a full 40,000 years before the main out-of-Africa migration that was supposed to have brought our ancestors into Neanderthal territory. Finding modern human DNA in a Neanderthal from that long ago is like finding a Roman coin underneath the foundations of an ancient Egyptian pyramid. It's an anachronism, a piece of the puzzle that simply doesn't fit. According to the established timeline of human history, that DNA had no business being there. It meant that the simple one-way story of us getting their DNA was completely wrong. The truth was far more complex and, frankly, way weirder. It suggested that there was another, much earlier migration of modern humans out of Africa. A lost tribe that journeyed into Asia, met the Altai Neanderthals, and had children with them. This group wasn't our main ancestral line. They were a different branch, a ghost lineage that left Africa, made its mark on the Neanderthal genome, and then vanished. This discovery didn't just add a new chapter to the human story, it forced us to tear out the old pages and start again. It opened up a mystery that we're still trying to solve. Who were these phantom humans, and what happened to them? The discovery changed everything because it meant our family tree wasn't a neat tree at all. Africa's ghost children. So if this mysterious DNA came from a group of modern humans who left Africa over 100,000 years ago, who on earth were they? The thing nobody tells you is that human migration wasn't a single event. We tend to imagine one big wagon train of humans leaving Africa and conquering the world. The reality was a lot messier. It was more like a leaky faucet with small groups dripping out of the continent over vast stretches of time. This particular group was one of those early drips. They were Homo sapiens, just like us, but they belonged to a lineage that split off from the ancestors of all living non-Africans hundreds of thousands of years ago. Think of them as our long-lost cousins, a branch of the family that went on a different path. What we can piece together from the genetic evidence is a truly epic story. Sometime after 200,000 years ago, a group of these early modern humans made their way out of Africa. We don't know how many there were, perhaps just a few hundred or a few thousand. They likely traveled northeast, following the coastlines or river valleys through the Middle East, a journey that would have taken generations. Unlike the later migrants who would eventually populate the rest of the world, this group seems to have turned east, pushing deeper into Central Asia. This was an incredibly hostile world. The Ice Age was in full swing, with massive glaciers to the north and harsh, arid deserts to the south. These people were true pioneers, stepping into a land that no modern human had ever seen before. And you can see this everywhere in the fossil record, or rather the lack of it. One of the biggest puzzles is that we have no bones from this lost tribe. Not a single skull, tooth, or tool has ever been definitively linked to them. They exist only as a ghost in the Neanderthal genome. Why? The most likely answer is that their population was always very small. They were a tiny drop in a vast ocean of Neanderthals and Denisovans. Over thousands of years, their lineage may have simply been absorbed into the larger archaic human populations, or they might have died out, unable to cope with the brutal climate or competition for resources. They were a failed expansion, a dead end on the human family tree, but not before they left their mark. When they arrived in the Altai Mountains, they met the local Neanderthals. We can't know the nature of their interactions. Perhaps they traded knowledge, shared hunting grounds, or fought over territory. But we know for a fact they did one thing: they had children together. The modern human DNA found in the Altai Neanderthal woman was her inheritance from one of these encounters. It was passed down through her mother or her mother's mother, a quiet testament to a moment when two different kinds of humans met and mixed in the heart of ancient Asia. The most mind-blowing detail is that this genetic exchange seems to have been a one-time event, or at least a very rare one. The specific DNA they left behind isn't found in other Neanderthal populations in Europe or the Middle East. It was a localized affair, a secret shared only by the Neanderthals of Siberia. This lost tribe came, left a faint genetic echo, and then disappeared forever. Their story forces us to rethink what it means to be a successful species. They were modern humans, anatomically and genetically, but their journey ended in obscurity. They were explorers who were ultimately swallowed by the vastness of the prehistoric world. But they weren't the only ones out there. The ancient world was far more crowded than we ever imagined, and Neanderthals were mixing with more than just us. This lost tribe was just one thread in a much more tangled web of ancient relations, a world of hybrids. The discovery of this ghost lineage did more than just reveal a lost tribe. It completely destroyed the old idea of a simple human family tree. Each branch was supposed to be separate and distinct. The thing is, genetics has proven this model is totally wrong. Our history isn't a tree, it's a braided river. It's a messy, tangled web of streams that diverge, flow separately for a while, and then crash back into each other, mixing their waters before splitting apart again. The ancient world was a world of hybrids. The Altai Mountains, where that special Neanderthal toe bone was found, was a major crossroads in this braided river. It was a place where at least 3 different kinds of humans crossed paths over tens of thousands of years. You had the Neanderthals, whose main territory was to the west, in Europe and the Middle East. Then you had the Denisovans, another group of archaic humans who were their eastern cousins, ranging all across Asia. And finally, you had at least 2 different waves of modern humans poking into the region at different times. Denisova Cave itself is the ultimate proof of this great mixing. In that one location, scientists have found the remains of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and even a first-generation hybrid, the bones of a young girl nicknamed Denny, whose mother was a Neanderthal and whose father was a Denisovan. What many overlooked is that this mixing wasn't just a casual, occasional thing. It was a fundamental part of our collective survival strategy. The Denisovans, for instance, interbred with Neanderthals multiple times. In fact, the Denisovan father of the hybrid girl Denny had Neanderthal ancestors of his own from generations earlier. It shows a long history of interaction. The Denisovans also mixed with that lost tribe of early modern humans, and later they mixed with the main wave of our ancestors who came out of Africa 60,000 years ago. Today you can find significant chunks of Denisovan DNA, up to 5% in the genomes of people from Papua New Guinea, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia. Some of that DNA is incredibly useful, like a gene variant that helps people in Tibet live at high altitudes without getting sick. That gene came from the Denisovans. This constant mixing and swapping of genes means that there was no such thing as a pure Neanderthal or a pure modern human once we all started meeting each other. We are all, to some extent, a mosaic. The genetic lines were constantly being blurred. This is the something that shouldn't exist in its truest sense. The idea that these distinct human species, which we neatly categorized and put into separate boxes, were in reality part of one large, interconnected network of interbreeding populations. The strict biological concept of a species, a group that can only reproduce with its own kind, doesn't really apply to us. We were all part of a single, sprawling, and diverse human metapopulation. This braided river model changes our perspective entirely. It means Neanderthals and Denisovans didn't just go extinct. In a way, they were assimilated. They live on as part of our own complex genetic heritage. They are not just bones in a museum, they are a part of us, written into our DNA. But if this is true, it forces us to ask a much deeper and more personal question. The hybrid in the mirror. So what does all this mean for us right now in the 21st century? You see, people watching this are probably looking for a mystery about ancient bones, but the real mystery is about ourselves. If our history is a braided river of constant mixing, are we missing a key detail about who we are? The thing is, this discovery forces us to look in the mirror and ask a very uncomfortable question: what does it even mean to be a human? For so long, we defined ourselves by what we were not. We weren't Neanderthals, they were the brutish, primitive cavemen. We were the smart, creative ones who survived. This new science throws all of that out the window. We now know that we carry their genes and they carried ours. The line between us and them has been completely erased. The story of the lost tribe and the constant interbreeding isn't just an academic detail, it directly challenges our sense of identity. Many people are crazy about ancestry tests tracing their roots back a few hundred years. But what if you could trace your roots back 50,000 years and find a Neanderthal grandmother or a Denisovan great-grandfather? You can. That's what 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA means. It's not an abstract number, it represents real ancestors, real families, real moments of connection between different kinds of people. You carry their legacy in your immune system, your metabolism, even your risk for certain allergies and diseases. What many have overlooked is the philosophical fallout. The idea of human exceptionalism, that Homo sapiens are special, unique, and the pinnacle of evolution, takes a serious hit. We weren't the chosen ones who replaced everyone else. We were just one of many human variants, and our ultimate success came from the fact that we were willing and able to mix with the others. Our strength, it turns out, came from our impurity. We are a hybrid species, a blend of different lineages. The most shocking fact might be that the very traits that helped our ancestors survive in new environments, like adapting to new diseases or different levels of sunlight, may have been borrowed from the Neanderthals and Denisovans who had already been living there for hundreds of thousands of years. We didn't conquer the world alone, we had help, written into the genes we inherited from them. This changes the story from one of replacement to one of assimilation and connection. Are we missing a key detail by even calling them a different species? Many scientists now argue we shouldn't. Perhaps Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo sapiens should all be considered regional varieties of the same human species, like different breeds of dog. The thing is, we now have the proof. We didn't just happen overnight. We are the result of a long, messy, and tangled process of evolution where the lines were always blurry. The thing that shouldn't exist wasn't some alien DNA, it was our own complexity, a history so tangled it defies our simple categories. The final revelation is that we are them, and they are us. So if we are all hybrids carrying the DNA of so-called extinct humans, does that mean extinction isn't real and we're just one chapter in a much larger story? Let us know your thoughts below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more answers to history's greatest mysteries.